Okay, I think we're ready to go. So hello and welcome everyone. My name is Professor Caroline Orfila. I'm Associate Director of the Global Food and Environment Institute here at the University of Leeds. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to the first virtual seminar of this institute, which will be presented by Professor Janet Cade, Chair in Nutritional Epidemiology, which is on the topic of improving the nutritional quality of baby food. The Global Food and Environment Institute is an interdisciplinary research community which brings together members from across academia, industry, public policy to work on the integrated challenges of food security and climate change. For further information about the Institute, please visit our website. This seminar is part of a series of seminars, so if you're interested to join other seminars, please check the chat function, our website, or our Twitter feed for more information about upcoming events. Before I introduce Professor Janet Cade formally, I would like to remind you of the seminar etiquette. Please ensure that your cameras and microphones are switched off for the duration of the seminar. The presentation will take about 20 minutes, during which please use the chat function addressed to everyone with your questions. At the end of the presentation, there will be a 10-minute Q&A session, during which I will collect the questions from the chat function and put them across to Professor Cade. May I remind you as well that the seminar is being recorded and a recording will be made available via YouTube. So it is my honor to introduce Professor Janet Cade, Group Leader of the Nutritional Epidemiology Group at the University of Leeds. During her career, Professor Cade has published over 260 research articles, which have been cited over 10,000 times. She established the UK Women's Cohort, a landmark cohort that has shone light on many important diet health interactions in women. Professor Cade's research has influenced government health guidelines for caffeine and alcohol intake during pregnancy, and has also influenced nutrition and health policy nationally and internationally. Her group developed, validated, and commercialized a dietary assessment tool called MyFood24, and also launched NutriTools, a toolkit for researchers to choose the most appropriate dietary assessment methods. Her influence on the nutrition field was also demonstrated by being the first registrar of the Association for Nutrition. In 2018, her group gained WHO collaborating center status, and I believe it is the work arising from this that will be the focus of her presentation today. So without further ado, I will hand over to Professor Janet Cade for her presentation.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and I hope everyone can hear me and see the slides as well. Thank you all for giving up part of your lunchtime to hear about this work, which, as Caroline says, is part of, oh gosh, now then, see, I'm trying to move the screen and it's not moving. I'm pressing the down, it worked just now. Let me see if I can get it to work. Do you want to come and options? It's not working. That is now okay. I don't know why it wasn't working before. Sorry, we will have some technical challenges. I'll do the best that I can. So my talk is going to include just mention of the work that we've done there with the WHO and the report. I'm going to talk about how we developed a nutrient profile model, this NPM model, and how we tested it, and then the development of a website to support testing baby foods. I'm still not sure if this is going to work. Penny, did you change the slide for me? It says I can control it, I just can't control it. I'm trying to change that slide. It's very slow. Okay, so just a bit of an introduction to the WHO Collaborating Centre for Nutritional Epidemiology. Darren Greenwood in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Leeds is our director of that. It's a very tiny little group of interested people. Sorry, I'll just turn it off. And we're aiming to improve global health, ambitious, through our evidence-based sustainable nutrition activity. We want to generate impact case studies. We've already got one and another is planned, and we want to generate research income, leading policy change and leadership in the area of nutrition and epidemiology. So this work has arisen from our WHO activity. I'm just finding it very difficult to change the slide. Okay, it's just not working very well. Right. Penny, shall I give this back to you? It might be easier to for you to control it, whilst I thought it was going to be easier for me. I'm sorry, I think I'd better, just because it really seems to be struggling to respond in any sort of reasonable time. Is that okay? Sorry about that, everybody.
Okay, that's fine.
It's back with you, Penny. Okay, so those of you who are parents will know what you feed your young children is really emotive. You know, I can remember when mine were young that, you know, some mums were like, oh, I'm not feeding any chocolate to my baby at this age. And, you know, very complex, very emotive, when and how and what to feed, really important. And breastfeeding for less than 6 months is really common in Europe, which increases risks of childhood obesity, rapid weight gain, and there's problems even for the infant with the gut microbiome. And then the association between nutrition in early life and adult health has also been demonstrated. And we know that dietary habits formed at young ages will persist into later years. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you very much. So the World Health Organization is using something called nutrient profiling to try to enhance commercial food offers, and this particularly is relating in my talk to commercially available complementary foods. So if you see that CACF, basically it means commercial baby food. And the aim for that is to protect breastfeeding, to prevent obesity, prevent chronic disease, promote a healthy diet, and ensure that caregivers get accurate information about foods. Next slide, please. So WHO current policy around feeding infants talks about breastfeeding exclusively for the first 6 months of life, followed by nutritionally adequate and safe complementary foods, whilst continuing to breastfeed. And that message doesn't always come through very clearly when you look at commercial products. Next slide, please. So there are hundreds of baby foods on the market which are labelled as suitable for infants from 4 months old. So you would believe that that was the approved time to start introducing solid food. And use of these commercial baby foods is common. 28% of products are marketed as suitable from 4 months. Over 50% of children consume commercial baby foods. Now, maybe some of you who have children, have had children, you know, there is a difficult decision to be made. When shall I start to introduce solid food? But the WHO and international recommendations talk about 6 months. Next slide, please. So there are current guidelines. This isn't something that's never been considered before. And in Europe, there are rules called Codex guidelines and EU directives, making sure that baby foods are safe, adhering to minimum or maximum nutrient thresholds, but actually, and perhaps actually this is a deliberate decision on the part of the EU. There are certain components of baby foods, sugars, textures and flavours, new snack products, and so on, which are not addressed by current guidelines. Next slide, please. So what have we done? Well, we took a look at the existing standards for infants and young children under 3 years old, and we did a scoping review to identify evidence. It was a pretty comprehensive review looking at the timing of solid food introduction and target age for weaning, how taste preferences develop, looking at the role of food texture, excuse me, thinking about nutritional quality of baby foods, health implications, and marketing and packaging claims. And then we created some guidelines for this nutrient profile model, NPM, with product data, label data from the UK, Denmark, and Spain. And then we refined that model and piloted it with a further 7 countries. And we then wrote a WHO report, the team did, which you can see there, is the front cover of it, detailing all of this information. We've then taken it a step further to explore how we can support policymakers and others to use these recommendations. So we have devised and developed an interactive website that can be used to test baby foods. Next slide, please. So some of the key concerns that came up from our review around baby foods was aspects of marketing. As I've already mentioned, many products are marketed for children under 6 months old. Taste and texture. Can we? Yeah, it's jumping for you even. Taste and texture is an important element where products are often sweet, masking vegetable flavors and textures, which could have an impact on long-term learning about taste and texture, creating preferences for sweet foods. The products are often high in sugar or salt, so not complying with public health recommendations. Energy density is a problem. They often have a high water content, therefore lower energy density than a homemade equivalent, and so can be consumed perhaps in too large a volume, providing excess of sugars, etc. And packaging claims can be misleading. So these were some of the things that we thought we needed to address. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've developed this nutrient profile model, and this aims to classify baby foods according to not only nutrient levels, but for the first time in one of these models, looking at the marketing and packaging claims on the product with a view to ending inappropriate promotion of these baby foods. Next slide. So what have we suggested? Well, here is a bit of a summary, and you don't really need to take it all in, but you can see there that we've been quite demanding perhaps in what we're saying here. So no fruit drink, juice or sweet milk drink should be advertised as a baby food. Now, it doesn't mean babies can't drink them, infants, but it shouldn't be advertised as such. No confectionery or sweet snacks should be advertised as baby foods. There should be no added sugars or other sweetening agents, including fruit juice or honey, and a maximum of 5% processed fruit in savoury purees. Pureed foods should have a maximum age of 12 months. Obviously, you want to start including lumpier products earlier. Sodium limits, no artificial trans fats, and limit on total fat. And then what we are suggesting is that there needs to be a minimum puree energy density so that you can get enough nutrients within a small volume, and a minimum protein requirement. So those were the nutritional angles that we've taken. Next slide. And we identified the recommended limits, if you like, by looking at existing products on the market. We weren't about to start saying, you know, you've got to create something completely different. Let's see what we've got, and can reformulation occur to bring in line with the healthier guideline. So the red text there is the current EU or EC regulation for sodium in foods for babies and infants, and our new recommendation proposing a reduction of sodium content to less than 50 milligrams per 100 cows is in the green there. And you can see that most of those products do fall within that green area. So it does mean that it is possible for manufacturers to produce products below that lower threshold. So it's not beyond their reach. Next slide. And here we've got total sugar as a percentage of energy. This is also just from UK products that we started to explore. And the highlighted green food types there on the left, these are savoury products. So you might hope that they didn't have a very high sugar content, but you can see that whilst perhaps lower than some fruit purees, etc., there's still considerable amount of sugar in there. So we've suggested that the limit on those savoury products is reduced. You can see that fruit containing products obviously have high natural levels of sugars, as do the dairy products. Next slide. And taking our packaging and labelling marketing requirements here, we wanted to be very clear that no infant food should be marketed for babies less than 6 months old, and products must state a suitable age of introduction, because obviously some products should be introduced perhaps later than 6 months. As well as the importance of continued breastfeeding. And they must state that a minimum age of products for older children. Total sugar percentage should be put on the front of pack, and you can see on the right there a suggested sort of label that gives that information, stating the percentage of fruit and added water in the ingredients list. And if you probably haven't, but if you do look at the back of pack ingredient list, water is often in there, but the amount of water is not stated. You'd have to do some calculations to work that out. Food packaging with a spout should clearly state infants and young children must not be allowed to suck directly from the pouch or container, which is often what's done. There should be unambiguous, that should say front of pack product names, better reflecting ingredients in descending order of content, and no nutritional health or marketing claims or other marketing materials. It needs to be clear. It shouldn't be trying to prey on carers' desires for healthier children, etc. Next slide, please. We published just last month a substantial paper from some of this work, the final validation area of these products from 10 European countries. Next slide, please. And just for simplicity, so you could actually read the information, I've just put 3 of the 10 countries up there, but we do have in the paper the full information for all 10 countries. And this slide is just showing the percentage of energy from total sugar in baby foods in the UK, Italy and Denmark. And overall, in terms of percentage energy from total sugar in baby foods, Italy had the lowest at 29%. Hungary, which isn't on this slide, had the highest at 44%. The UK had 33% of energy from total sugar in baby foods overall. And you can see here that that orange bar, fruit purees, has the highest, is the highest contributor of percentage energy from total sugar. Next slide. And then this slide is showing something similar, but it's about the amount of added sugar. The previous slide was on total sugar, but this is sugar being added to products. And you can see here, obviously, that sweet snacks, rusks and teething biscuits, etc., have very high amounts of added sugar in there. In this instance, overall, Denmark had the lowest and Hungary again had the highest percentage of added sugar in their products. Okay, next slide. So some key messages from this work is that we see that most categories of commercial baby foods do have high sugar content, and that includes savoury foods where you might not expect it. Use of added sugars and sweeteners such as concentrated fruit juice and pureed fruit is widespread across all categories of food types. So infants are being exposed to high levels of sugar at this very early age, despite recommendations from WHO. And sweet foods may well be contributing, but are contributing to excess energy intake and tooth decay, as well as chronic disease development in later years. So we need to get political, organisational commitment to trying to tackle this and provide support for industry reformulation of products. We've given some clear proposals in our WHO report and in this paper around reducing sugar, and we've developed this nutrient profile model to end inappropriate promotion of baby foods. Next slide, please. And just sort of coming back, I suppose, to our nutrient profile model and the marketing claims, I wanted to just give you an illustration, and there are many more I could have picked, but of misleading product names. So you can see there that first one, apple and blueberry yogurt. Perhaps it seems fair enough. Apple is that first listed ingredient at 59%, but it does imply that yogurt would be the main ingredient, but fruit is actually 76% of that product. So we've suggested alternative names, you know, apple with yogurt and blueberry, or apple and blueberry with yogurt as an option. The next one, red peppers, sweet potatoes and apple puree. Again, misleading order of foods in the name. It's mostly apple, 78% apple. Berry yogurt, again implying yogurt the main ingredient, but actually fruit content is the main one. And similarly with the strawberry and raspberry and banana puree. So I think it's about being really clear of what's in there, how much, what proportion, because mums need to know. Next slide. So we've developed an online tool to take these what perhaps appear somewhat complex recommendations and guidelines so that people can use our online calculator. Next slide, please. And because this is only a brief talk, obviously I don't have time to demonstrate it to you, but you can find it at babyfoodnpm.org if you want to try it out. It's the first ever actually online nutrient profile calculator available for wide use. I know some commercial producers have their own, but this is something that can be used by regulators and indeed the public, though we're not aiming it at the public. And it would give a result as to whether your infant food is healthy or less healthy and whether marketing and packaging claims are appropriate. Next slide. So I just did a random test. I just picked the first baby food that kind of came up, and it was this hip organic mixed vegetable medley. you can see straight away there that's being advertised as suitable from 4 months. So actually this product, whilst you would think it was pretty good, it in fact failed the nutrient profile model. It met 4 out of 5 of the nutrition recommendations, but only 5 out of 9 of the marketing one. Next slide. The one it failed on in the nutrition angle was the nutrient density, so it was too watery, and the amount of water wasn't stated, so I had to calculate it from the rest of the ingredients. And then the marketing messages didn't, from what I could see, and I did find on Amazon a slide of this product which had the whole label. I didn't go out and buy one. So it doesn't include something on importance of breastfeeding. It doesn't. It does include information, as you saw, that it's suitable from under 6 months, and it didn't state the percentage of water on the label, and it did make some sort of health claim. I can't remember what the statement was now on there. Next slide, please. So anyone, you can try and use the nutrient profile model to test products, to decide whether a product should or should not be marketed for children under 3 years old, and may support whether products should be reformulated or indeed could be reformulated, hopefully informing the development of public health policy. Next slide. So whilst we realise that there are many drivers of change towards improved nutritional behaviour, here we are hoping towards supporting consumer benefits, providing clear, accurate information on infant feeding, avoiding misleading claims, and marketing suitable products. There are many other reasons why we should be supporting improved infant feeding. Next slide. So this is my last slide. What we're trying to do is that we want to, well, I'll read the statement. We believe that everyone everywhere should have accurate information about baby foods, and we're aiming to make assessing baby foods easy. So thank you very much. That's the end of the slide. Now we've got a question and answer session. I can see that Marion has asked a question. Well, I can't see what it is. Let me just see.
Oh, thank you very much, Janet, for this very good overview of all the important work that you have been doing over the last few months with WHO on this baby food. Yes, so we have a question from Marion Hetherington on you know, how can some of this evidence on the profiling and nutrient profile modeling be amended for homemade baby foods? So can the same modeling be used essentially for homemade baby foods?
Well, yeah, I think it can be. Obviously, the marketing guidelines aren't relevant there, so you can ignore those. And I guess if you have a recipe that you're following, then well, you would need to calculate the nutritional composition, but there might well be some, I mean, we haven't done this yet, but it might be possible to simplify, exploring, you know, how much salt per 100 grams of your recipe, and how much water, you know, should you be adding fruit puree or something like that, so that, you know, we could adapt it to make it easier for the home producer to use. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question as well about whether you have had any reactions from companies or government regulators about these proposed changes to policy and practice.
Well, yes and no, as it were. We launched, so sorry, I was slightly flustered at the start where all the slides wouldn't move on and whatever, and I probably should have said that we launched the WHO report last year, and at a couple of meetings, and people from across Europe attended that. And I did have somebody from, I think it was Kazakhstan, approach me saying that one of the big companies had said, could they advertise their baby foods in Kazakhstan? She said, what shall I do? And I said, well, why don't you try using the nutrient profile model? And if the product passes, it can be advertised. And if it doesn't pass, it wouldn't be advertised. Now, I've not had any follow-up from that, but that was on the day of the presentation. We've had, I think, colleagues from working with baby foods in the Philippines use it to assess products there. And it's interesting because at an international level, obviously we focused, our remit is within WHO Europe, but other countries have, there are some things, gels and powders, that perhaps we didn't take into account quite well enough, if you like, with regard to our recommendations. We found a way of supporting that, but and with regard to, sorry, the third point, with regard to the website, the university, we're talking with our media team to promote that website, because it's only just been finished during the sort of lockdown, and we haven't had a chance to kind of push it forwards, but we plan to do that.
Okay, thank you. And there's a question a bit about communication as well. You know, what do you think would be the best channels for communicating this information to parents and carers?
Oh, to parents and carers, well, I mean, there are lots of interested charity groups like First Steps Nutrition and so on, which, although in fact, sorry, I'm stepping back now, but I think their remit is to communicate with healthcare professionals, but maybe that's the route for us to communicate with them, and indeed we have been communicating with them, and then they take that message to their training of health visitors and midwives and so on, so that we can kind of disseminate it out to parents. And then on the other side of it, obviously, is work to be done with the industry themselves.
Okay, and one more question would be around, you know, the profiles seem to be primarily focusing on reducing certain components, such as sugars and saturated fats. Did you also look at the nutrient density in terms of micronutrient density, and perhaps whether those nutrient profiles were met in the majority of the baby foods you looked at?
No is the honest answer to that, partly because the steer was coming from WHO Europe, where micronutrient malnutrition, well, you could argue, but is less of a problem than in other low and middle income country parts of the world. So we didn't. I think it would be a very interesting and useful thing to do, and Marion and I have got hopes that we can get a PhD student to work on exploring the whole sort of remit of this baby food nutrient profile modelling further, and certainly could look at micronutrient composition, because one might hope that through the recommendations that we've made, we actually do enhance micronutrient levels in products, but we've no knowledge that that's the case, but we might assume that we could explore that and see if it does happen.
Okay, and one very quick last one about fruits. I think fruits are quite a contentious issue in nutrition sometimes, because they're obviously rich in nutrients, and you know, such as fermentable fiber and vitamins and minerals, but also rich in sugar. So do you think that to some extent some of these guidelines might demonize fruits and put people off eating fruits in the longer term, or not?
Well, it could do, but I think it's not really about doing that. We're not anti-fruit. I think it's just that a parent mightn't be expecting the majority ingredient to be pureed apple in something that's called chicken and vegetable puree, you know. So I think it's just about being honest. And Marion, probably we haven't got time to discuss this now further, but one thing that we really noticed was this sort of approach towards making everything really sweet so that babies don't get used to a more bitter flavour. And we really think that there's room for supporting mums to provide small tastes of alternative, not just super sweet, sticky, purees, but some vegetable rich, more bitter tastes as well, which doesn't happen, probably because babies don't like them and then they don't sell. So it's a bit of a catch-22 situation.
Thank you very much. So I think we've come to the end of the Q&A session. So it's now for me to, really thank Professor Cade, Janet, for your presentation and for taking the time to answer the questions today. I think we've all learned a lot about it. And for me to also thank everybody who's attended today, and to remind you that the presentation will be available through the Institute's YouTube channel, and to please continue to engage with us through our social media platforms, where the next seminars will also be posted, but I'm sure that you'll be able to engage also with this seminar if you have any other questions after the end of the session. Okay, so I think on the chat you'll be able to see that the next seminar will be on sustainable food supply in cities by Dr. Eleonora Morganti, and we hope to see you all then. So thank you very much and enjoy your lunch.
Yeah, thanks everybody, thank you.
Thanks very much, Janet. Bye-bye.